Hi, Virgo. Welcome to your 2022 wrap up. Sorry, I'm a little behind on these, but that 2023 energy is like, what? I needed a minute. So I am here to do this now. Pulled some cards to figure out what your main themes were and why they were happening, and then how it affected different areas of your life. You got Temperance in the reverse for your overall energy for the year of 2022. And I'm seeing some pretty difficult energy as far as the areas of your life. It feels like now, star for why this took place. So let's break this down. This doesn't really have as much to do with you as it does the people in your life. And then because you love the people in your life so much, it affects you. And how you feel about yourself is what this looks like to me. There's been kind of this theme of imbalance in your life where perhaps you find yourself continuously giving to situations that have shown you in the past that it might be time to move forward or to try a different approach. I feel like you are very dedicated, right, to the people in your life, whether it's your family, your partners, what have you. But the problem here is that you're giving and giving to the point of exhaustion. And then I'm seeing a lot of kind of devil energy coming through in your reading because it looks like to me people just kind of have that expectation that you will always do that, right? And so I feel as though this year you probably experienced some great difficulty in regards to your love life for sure, because you have the Seven of Pentacles for how this theme has affected you. Now it looks like you are working really hard to build stability within a connection or a household, and something has rocked that stability. My guess is that if you were with a partner, there could have been infidelity that you discovered this year. It could even be that perhaps everything that you were working towards building with someone, they were not as committed to that as you were, because it looks as though they were entertaining something outside of the home or outside of the relationship. And I feel like that's been very difficult for you, but I also feel like that's something that you've experienced from this particular person in the past with your Hermit in the reverse. And wow, the Lovers in the reverse. Yeah, so this is kind of, Emperor reverse. This is kind of a reoccurring theme for those of you that have been in a connection that's been long, right? So unfortunately this year, it looks like your partnership, something flared up that showed you that perhaps you were still in a position of always being the one to give or forgive, and you were being taken for granted. Let's see. Okay, so Five of Swords. I feel like this took place because you're being advised to see this situation for what it is, right? It's very normal to want to bring people with you when you prosper. And I'm seeing that for your money, it looks like it was actually really good this year. But sometimes people view your victory or your success as their meal ticket or their free ride, right? And so you've been blessed. And I feel like within that blessing, perhaps you took this person back into your life because you wanted them to share in that blessing. And I would caution you about that, because it's very possible that you could see that if you're giving to something that energetically makes you feel lack on such a level that disturbs you, right? Disturbs your emotional frequency, you may begin to attract missed opportunities, or things start to kind of dry up within this really good financial situation that I'm seeing for you. So just be very careful of that, right? I feel like the universe was trying to show you that for everything that you're giving to this connection, there's someone out there that will meet you more than halfway. I don't know that it is this person. I feel like they'd have to have some pretty drastic life events happen before they could get on that level, because they're still operating in a very selfish energy. And I just think that the universe wants you to take some time to heal, with your star being your reason why, to really look at kind of where are you expending your resources or your time, right? Now, when I'm looking into your money, you have Four of Swords in the reverse. So I feel like this has been a very busy year, right? For those of you who perhaps were not working through the pandemic, or you could have been like taking care of children who are always in and out of school, or even having younger children that weren't ready to go to school, it looks like you were able to return back to the workforce full force, right? And because of that, you're able to see a lot of gains within your finances. This happened so that you could see, because you actually got Four of Swords in the upright for a reason why, that when you take action and go after what you want, you really can have it, right? I feel like this has been a great year as far as like money. You've been probably pretty grateful for the wins you've experienced, but it's been through your own hard work, right? And so sometimes when our money situation is really good as a result of our efforts, the universe is using our finances to kind of show us what we're worthy of, or when we're in alignment with what we're supposed to be doing, how much success we can have so easily, right? Whereas with this love connection, it feels like there's so much investment and it's just like pouring water into a bucket with holes, right? When you're in an environment where you're supported and you're aligned with your purpose, or you're aligned with what you're supposed to be doing, I feel like the sky is the limit for you guys, right? And so your career, the universe was using your career to really show you that you can have all these gains when you're making the same effort towards something that really is meant for you, right? As far as your relationship with yourself, you got the Seven of Wands. So I feel like you've had to make a lot of really difficult decisions this year. It feels as though for some of you, love has been kind of front and center, and it's felt like you had to fight with yourself about the choices that you were going to make with whoever this person was, right? It feels like you've been at war with yourself because you're having all these gains and elevation in your career, it looks like. But then, behind the scenes on the home front or in the relationship, there's kind of all of this tumultuous discord, right? And so there's that energy of maybe feeling like an imposter, or feeling as though one thing is working out so great, but if everybody knew the rest, is my home life in alignment with my success that I'm having? Am I going to be able to maintain this success when it feels like whatever this is working against me? And so there's been a lot of disarray, I'd say, as far as your relationship with yourself, because you want so badly to have that success. But I feel like you're so critical of yourself, of how you're managing some of these bigger situations that unfortunately don't have anything to do with you, right? And so it's hard because you want to celebrate your wins, but at the same time, there's kind of this glaring situation within your love life that it feels like you're trying so hard to hold together. And, it could be because there's children involved. It could be that perhaps you made a larger purchase with this person and you don't want to have to cut ties because what do you do with that business or whatever? And so there's kind of this energy of you spending the year being at war with yourself and actually feeling very critical of yourself, feeling like perhaps you're sabotaging your own success. And what I'll say about that is a lot of those feelings came through this year so that you could start giving yourself that same loving kindness and forgiveness that you're giving to everyone around you, right? If you could treat yourself, Virgo, with just like an ounce of the understanding that you have for perhaps your colleagues or your clients or your significant other, you would really heal a lot, right? I think you are your own biggest critic. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing here is that when things don't work out, rather than you looking at the situation and saying, you know what, that's that person's problem, it's almost like you internalize it and you make it into a situation where it's like, if I were better, they would be faithful, right? Or if I worked harder or whatever, and I don't know where that belief system comes from. It could be with the Emperor in the reverse, a father figure that you had, who perhaps was unfaithful to your, other parent. And so that was something that you were told or that you felt growing up. There's something here about you feeling as though you have to be everything to everyone. And unfortunately, it feels like you get a bit lost in the shuffle of that, right? So the feelings that you were feeling and kind of that like inner critic being quite critical of you this year, that was flaring up because you're supposed to be practicing better self-care, okay? Better love of yourself, forgiveness for yourself. And you might be thinking like, I didn't do anything wrong. People do things to me. And that is what I'm seeing in the spread. But with the 7 of Wands being where you're at, there's a lot of blaming yourself for what people are doing to you. And so when you have that knee-jerk reaction of like, well, so-and-so did this to me, I want you to stand on that, right? Because they did do that to you. And it wasn't because you weren't enough. And it wasn't because you didn't try harder, right? That's that person's stuff, okay? So I feel like this might be something that you re-encounter in 2023. It's simply because this is still kind of an issue in your life right now, right? So trying to figure out where your boundaries lie, that would be probably very helpful for you. You may have had to assert some pretty difficult boundaries in this year. But I also feel like you need to start feeling good about doing that, right? The only people who view boundaries as like a punishment are people who are unhealthy and they don't have boundaries, okay? Because people who have boundaries actually get really uncomfortable to be around people who do not, all right? So that's a really good way to kind of gauge the level of like self-awareness or emotional intelligence or health of people you're dealing with is as you're beginning to assert yourself. What is the clapback or the backlash? Because a healthy person, there isn't going to be any. They're going to be like, okay, that's cool. I respect that. Thanks for telling me. Right? Whereas an unhealthy person will be like, well, why are you tripping? Why are you acting like this? You always do this. And that's how they kind of suck you into making you feel as though you're the one to blame for their bad behavior. Okay. Now, as far as your mental, you got Queen of Wands in the reverse, Page of Pentacles in the reverse. So again, this is you being very hard on yourself, right? For some of you, you've been kind of working on yourselves behind the scenes. And maybe you were telling yourself like next year is going to be my year. Next year is not going to be like this year. And you started to do some things to solidify or fortify your foundation. And perhaps you have not shown the rest of the world that yet, or the people in your life that yet, right? That's awesome, and I feel like that is a necessary change. You probably did some self-care or some self-love. Perhaps you try to do some things for yourself rather than put everybody in the front seat. But more than that, I feel like this was a really rough year for how you felt about yourself, based on the two very conflicting things that you're seeing. It's almost like you were in two worlds this year, right? Maybe at home, things are really rough. At work, you're being celebrated and things are really amazing. And that's where that temperance energy kind of comes into play with it being in the reverse of there not being any happy medium, right? Either things are really amazing or things are really bad. And that could have even been within your relationship as well, right? And so I feel like that really affected your self-esteem. It affected the way that you feel about your efforts. There were times I feel like last year that you really felt like giving up. And what I'll say about that is the reason that this came into play was so that you could examine your own efforts and how hard you really do work, and perhaps realize that you're beating a dead horse in some areas of your life, right? Like perhaps you're giving so much of yourself to things that they're not meant to grow, and because of that, that doesn't mean you're a horrible gardener, right? It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It could just be that that's not what's meant for you. So unfortunately, I feel like this year, with that Queen of Wands in the reverse, you probably, again, felt like you were in that tug of war energy, feeling kind of low about yourself at times, feeling frustrated with yourself, with your efforts. But really, if you can step out of that emotion and look at it from a bigger picture, right? If you're trying to create with materials that are not appropriate for what you're creating, you're going to struggle every time. And I feel like that's what kind of goes back to this love situation that perhaps the person that you're trying to create with, they're just not in a space where they're emotionally ready to have anything of value. You know, does this person squander their own money? Do they squander your money? Oftentimes, how people treat their finances is how they feel about relationships as well, right? So try very hard if you can, rather than to get in that mode of like, nothing works for me, I'm not good enough. If you could look at the materials of your environment, or if you could look at the people or their mode of operation, because there's something here where you're supposed to realize that it's not you, okay? It's not about you. I think you're just attracting people that you've probably been dealing with for quite some time. And it looks like you've elevated, you've changed, and unfortunately, they have not. And with them, it's almost easier to damage you than to support you or to do the work to get on your level. Okay, Virgo. So these were your lessons for 2022. I hope that this will aid you moving forward into 2023, because you can see the areas that you still kind of need to work on versus some that it feels like you're really accomplished in. I will speak to all of you again soon, but in the meantime, you take very good care of yourselves. Bye.